Welcome to Coffee, Culture, and the Capital with Sophia and Greg.
Well, welcome everybody. Glad to have you. As always, I'm here with Sophia Laurie, and this is Greg Bird. And we have a great show for you planned today. First, we're going to talking about free speech and a lawsuit that has been filed, which Sophia is actually personally involved in. So that's going to be exciting. We're also going to be talking about a victory down in San Diego. If you just watched some of our previous programs, San Diego supervisor was introducing a resolution and a plan to attack pregnancy care centers. And we got some positive information to talk about because her plan's been withdrawn. And we're also going to be talking about California Family Council is putting out scorecards. We are grading our legislators up here at the state capitol, and we are going to reveal the results to you. So that's what we got going for us. And so let's start with our first interview. I want to introduce Tyson Langhofer. He is the senior counsel and director of the Center for Academic Freedom for Alliance Defending Freedom. Welcome, Tyson.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
And of course, we have Sophia here, and she's also part of this interview because Tyson is going to be defending her, as well as several other organizations in a free speech case regarding a library just north of Sacramento in Yolo County that violated Sophia's freedom of speech. And so we're going to talk about that lawsuit. But just to give you some kind of context to what happened, we are going to show a short video. So why don't we get that rolling, then we can talk about
it. I was able to live out my dream. The current 10-year-old girls cannot live out the same dream as long as men are allowed to compete in women's sports. So now, no matter how hard girls work,
you can't do that.
Okay. Biological men can compete in women's sports.
But what you said, you will be absolutely fine. I will give you one warning.
Keep going. Nobody has to be here.
So no matter how hard biological girls work, they will never be able to be physiologically faster and stronger than biological men that are trying to play in biological female sports. Allowing biological men in women's sports does not create an equal playing field, but instead robs young biological girls of their athletic aspirations. When I played college soccer, my freshman year,
prejudice and hatred is not welcome in Dayton.
please record this because we will be sending this to you. Can we why am I being asked to leave?
Because you were talking about misgender, you were talking about men and female
I
sports.
said biological. Here, we have a licensed California attorney right here.
So
Please
am I.
listen.
So am I. That's right. You did lie about discrimination.
Well, that was kind of a chaotic event. You're trying to give a speech. And so just to set this up, you were invited to this library, a public library, by Moms for Liberty. And you, as a former soccer player in college, you played for Vanguard. You wanted to talk about the fact that men should not be allowed in a women's sports. It was a simple topic of conversation. And so what happened when you started talking? What was all that chaos?
Yeah, as you could see in the video, I was there simply just to share my story about being a college athlete. I began by explaining that at 10 years old, my goal was to become a college soccer player, and I achieved that goal. Like you mentioned, I played soccer at Vanguard University in Southern California. And my heart breaks because current 10-year-old girls, they do not have the ability to achieve the same goal as long as men are playing in women's sports. And you can see the second said that in the video, the crowd began to heckle, and then eventually I changed the language to biological males and biological females, hoping that would keep the event going on. And the librarian then shut it down anyways, and you can see at the end of that video where he said for saying that men are in women's sports.
So what rule did he have that he said you violated?
Well, he began to go into saying that it was part of California law and the library policy. We know neither of those are true. So, I mean, if you want to dive into that.
Yeah, I mean, so he said that California law prohibits misgendering, which again, that's not true. There is no California law that prohibits misgendering. But even if there was, it would be a violation of the First Amendment, because the government cannot pick and choose what somebody can say simply because of their opinion. And, especially on this topic, I mean, this is an important topic for Sophia to be able to clearly articulate her position. She needs to distinguish between men and women. And you need to be able to call a biological man a man so that she can communicate her point that men shouldn't be competing against women. And so the librarian shut them down because of their viewpoint, which is a clear First Amendment violation.
Right. And so, and that's why exactly, can you explain the basics of the suit?
Sure.
And then what you did. I'm assuming you sent a letter in, and what did they say?
Yeah, so what we tried to do was we sent a letter initially and said, look, we want, Sophia and the others want to hold this event. They want to be able to complete the event without getting shut down. Will you please confirm that, in fact, they will be able to hold this event and they'll be able to express their opinion using terms to describe males as males, and that they won't get shut down for that? Library responded and said, well, you have your First Amendment rights and you can speak pursuant to the First Amendment. And we were like, well, we know that, but we've asked specifically for you to confirm that we will be able to use these terms without being shut down. Because they were unwilling to confirm that, we had to file a federal lawsuit in the Northern District of California asking the court to do a couple things. First, to force the library to modify their policies so they are constitutional. Second, to enter an order requiring the library to allow Sophia and the others to hold this event at the library and not censor them. And third, to make them actually enforce their policies and not allow others that disagree with Sophia from disrupting the event and not allowing it to continue.
And those were the things that they couldn't agree to.
That's right. Yeah, they were not willing to agree to all of those terms initially in our letter. So that's why we are forced to file a lawsuit so that we can get them to change the policy, allow them to hold this event, and make sure that others aren't, disrupting the event. As Sophia indicated, she was going to allow them a time for a Q&A. If they disagreed with her, they could come up and ask questions. They didn't need to shout her down. If they disagreed, they can, do it in a respectful way, but they were unwilling to do that. And the library, unfortunately, was unwilling to enforce it in an even-handed fashion.
Wow. It's kind of unbelievable. I mean, this is a library. Aren't they used to knowing what the rules are regarding him? I'm assuming if they open it up to anyone, they can't discriminate based on the words that are said. Is that right?
That's exactly right. I mean, the library doesn't have to allow the members of the public to come in and use their facilities. But if they do open it up, then they have to open it up in a manner that does not discriminate based upon the content and the viewpoint, and they have to treat everybody equally. And that's not what they've done here. If you read the lawsuit, you'll see there's this history of the library trying to censor Moms for Liberty events. And every time they would hold an event, they'd bring their books out and they would encourage protesters to come in, and they wouldn't enforce the rules. They were really trying to shut down and discriminate against this viewpoint because they disagree with it. And what we know for sure is the First Amendment does not allow government officials to pick and choose what language they like and what they don't like, and use their power to shut them down.
Right. Well, I read through the lawsuit, and I was curious about one of their responses to why they thought they had the right to prohibit Sophia's speech, and they said something about fighting words, that there are certain words that are not protected by the First Amendment. What are fighting words? And
Yeah. So there are very limited categories of speech that are not protected. You have incitement to imminent violence, and that has to literally be, saying, "Hey, let's go out right now and do something violent, break these windows, or assault somebody, things like that." You have to actually, that would be an incitement. That's not protected. Fighting words, it's not really defined, but it's more directed at a single individual, and it's basically a word or some type of communication where everybody would know it's essentially designed to create violence, and you're going to actually cause violence from that direct, that language. So that's what fighting words, and I guess but that is a very, very narrow category that's not protected. And it's done, again, when you're directing it at somebody, you're insulting them, or you're saying, "Hey, I'm going to come do some violence to you right now." That wouldn't be protected. That's clearly not what was happening here. Sophia was simply describing her experience as a college athlete and expressing her opinion that men shouldn't be competing against women and taking away their victories. So it clearly would not be fighting words. He's definitely wrong on that, and I think that the court will recognize that.
wow. So what happens next? What's the latest?
Yeah, so the latest is, after we filed the lawsuit, the county actually reached out to us and said, "Hey, would you be willing to talk about settlement?" We said, "Absolutely." Our goal is not to have a long lawsuit. Our goal is to have good policies and allow everybody to be able to use the library on an equal basis. And so our hope is that the county will modify its policies, allow the groups to come back in, do the event, and then enforce their policies on an equal basis going forward. If they'll do that, we'll reach a settlement. If they won't, then we're going to ask the court to enter an injunction against the library, stopping them from enforcing this policy in an unconstitutional manner.
Wow. So it sounds like you've almost got a victory here. They just have to put it in writing, I guess.
Well, I hope so. I mean, we haven't agreed on the terms yet. They know what our demands are, and they've indicated that they're willing to talk with us. So I'm hopeful that they'll do the right thing, and that they'll allow this event to go forward, and that they'll ensure that it doesn't happen to anybody. I don't care whether they disagree with Sophia or they agree with them. Nobody should be shut down by a government official simply because the official disagrees with their viewpoint.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it, and thanks so much for Alliance Defending Freedom being willing to leap in around the country and defend folks' freedom of speech rights. I mean, we are so grateful.
Well, we're so thankful to partner with great organizations like California Family Council. You guys are doing awesome work, and anytime you need us to come in and help, we're willing to do that. So thank you very much for standing up.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Joining us, Tyson.
Thanks, Sophia.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, so a great little update. Alliance Defending Freedom has just been absolutely phenomenal in this situation. And kind of like you said and Tyson said there at the end, this isn't our first time working with Alliance Defending Freedom. We work with them quite often when it comes to legislation in California, things happening across the nation. So they're always a great organization to partner alongside with.
That's awesome. All right, next topic.
Yes.
Now you were down, and we had talked about this before in a previous. If you go on our website, you'll see various stories, a couple stories about this. But down in San Diego, there was a supervisor who her name is Lawson Remer, Supervisor Tara Lawson Remer, and she introduced, put on the agenda last month, like a proposal. And the proposal had two parts to it. One part said, hey, attorney, county attorney, we want you to put together a lawsuit to close down all the 16 pregnancy centers in the San Diego County area because we think they're fraudulent. They're deceiving women and they're tricking them into coming and not getting abortions. And then they were going to put together a campaign, like a media campaign to discredit all the great work that pregnancy care centers do in that county. And they had a hearing. And Sophia, tell me about that hearing, because you went and testified, didn't you?
Yes, I was there. That hearing was earlier in November, and I was there. There was quite a few pregnancy center directors there. There was nurses and doctors that worked at some of those pregnancy centers that were also there. It was a great turnout. We had probably went on for 2 hours of people testifying, and every single person testifying in person was in support. And I don't even believe anyone called or in opposition to it, so in support of the pregnancy centers. And I believe all the telephone ones were also in opposition, supporting the pregnancy centers. And there was over 1,000 comments submitted online opposing Tara Lawson-Remmer's agenda item to attack pregnancy centers. And I believe about 930 of them, about there, were in opposition to this agenda item. So it was evident where the people of San Diego County stood when that was heard. The vote, it went 2-2 because there is 5 supervisor seats in San Diego County, but at the time there was only 4 filled seats. So the vote got split 2-2, which means the agenda item ultimately failed. To which then we received word that Supervisor Lawson-Remmer was going to bring the agenda item back on December 5th, I believe it was. It was going to be voted on again just this past Tuesday. And so we got together, we got a game plan going. We talked to the people in San Diego County. Here's how to make a phone call. Here's how to submit letters, because we need to fight this. Because now in this new meeting, there was officially that 5th seat was filled. And the person who filled that 5th San Diego Board of Supervisors seat was expected to vote in favor of the agenda item, which means it would have passed 3-2, ultimately attacking pregnancy centers and spreading a misinformation campaign about them. So, like I said, we got together. We then got official word it was on the agenda. It was online. It was on the agenda. And then all of a sudden it got marked off the agenda. And so we're going, okay, it's not being heard. What's going on? And some of our people that are beside us fighting this, that are in San Diego County, they called her office just to simply thank her. Say, thanks for removing this item. They weren't asking why or what happened, just thank you for removing this. And Supervisor Lawson-Remmer's office informed her that it was removed because there were so many calls from constituents and people of San Diego County asking her to remove it. And so she listened to the constituents, she removed it. There's always a chance it could be brought back, but this is a great win. Like I said, this would have been a horrendous attack on pregnancy centers, just absolutely spreading lies and misinformation about them. So it was a great win. It didn't even get heard. And we're going to stay focused, still paying attention to see if it ever gets brought back. But we shut it down here in San Diego County. And so hopefully no other counties take up the same idea because, like I said, we stopped it.
No, that's right. And the infuriating part about this whole thing is she didn't even mention or name a particular pregnancy center that she thought was being deceiving. Like she didn't say. And so that's just infuriating. Like, how can you combat a lie when you don't give any specifics to who's supposedly lying or who's deceiving? Like, she didn't even bring forward a witness of some client that went into a pregnancy center and was deceived, right? And so that's the insidious, awful nature about this. Is it's really a government official taking their power and deciding to slander and defame a nonprofit that she doesn't like their messaging. She's all pro-abortion, and she doesn't like that the pregnancy centers are out there offering a different message, right? Offering, a way for people to actually have their children, right? Not every woman who finds themselves pregnant and alone and needing help wants to abort their child, but who do they go to? They can't go to Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood's not going to encourage them to have their child and provide, all the things that would be needed to have a child. No, their answer is abortion, right?
Yeah.
Eliminate the life of the child. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, this is one of those issues with pregnancy centers. If you are pro-life or pro-abortion, whichever you are, you should be supporting them. because all they do is simply help women and families and children in need. If we were to call it Planned Parenthood right now and I were to say, hey, I need some baby diapers and do you have any baby clothes? Nope, they couldn't help there. Do you have any formula? Nope, couldn't help. But the pregnancy centers do help, as well as all of the services you can get at Planned Parenthood that are the good services. Again, they don't provide anything good because when they provide murder, there's no use to use them for anything else. But when you can go get a pregnancy test, when you can go get STD testing, STI testing, all that, most pregnancy centers provide those services. Different levels of pregnancy centers provide different things depending if they're a medical licensed clinic or not. But they're there simply to help women. So if you are pro women and pro children and pro families and pro men, you would support pregnancy centers because all they do is offer free services. So
Right. And it's just so important for us to defend these centers when they're attacked by legislators. Call them out for lying. Don't let them get away with slander. Because I think the public assumes, well, if you don't defend yourself, then you're like admitting what they're saying is true. So So I'm glad to see this happen. I hope this sends a message to every county supervisor in California who thinks about doing something similar. Beyond that, it's completely illegal, right? You can't limit somebody's free speech. You can't limit the free speech of these pregnancy centers simply because you don't like their message.
Exactly. And, we kind of started this podcast. We actually started it this January of this past year. And the whole goal was to inform you all in the easiest way possible what's happening at the Capitol, what bills are being heard this week, how to fight the legislation, all that. And of course, right now we're not in legislative session, so that's why we're updating you on so many other things that just happened across California. But we have right now, I think, one of the most amazing things that California Family Council has to offer. And it is the scorecards that Greg himself worked very hard to get together to inform you all. And so it's like, you go to school, you're there for your semester, you get your scorecard at the end of the year. How did you do based off of what the teacher said? How did you do and all that? So we have our own California Family Council scorecards where every legislator in California, from on the state Senate side and the assembly member side, received a score based off of the bills that we are watching this year. And so, Greg, I will pull up right now the assembly member scorecard sheet so everyone can kind of see how the assembly members ranked based off of CFC's opinion. So there you go. Here we see, who do we have at the top, Greg, for the assembly?
Well, there are only 4 legislators got an A out of 80 in the assembly. And that was Assembly Member woman Megan Dawley, and she's up in the Redding area. Assemblyman Vince Fong, he's down in the Bakersfield, Kern County area. Assemblyman Joe Patterson, he's over by Rockland area, which is just east of Sacramento, for those of you who don't know. And then Assemblyman Tri Ta. And Tri Ta, he represents down in Orange County, Northern Orange County, Westminster, Garden Grove area. And so, so they are the ones that got the top grade. And now we'll show you what an individual scorecard looks like, but they have around 20 different bills that we graded them on. And so if they voted the way we wanted them to, then they got the full points, right?
Yeah. Everyone on the assembly member Megan Dawley's individual scorecard.
Okay, so you can see that right there. So if you look at it, the color behind the bill number, like the very top bill number, is AB 567. If the color is red, that means we wanted them to vote no, right? So you can see that we wanted most of these bills to be defeated, but there was one green bill, SB 14, that was a human trafficking bill that we wanted people to vote yes on, all right? And so if you look at how Megan Dawley did, that shows her vote. A nay means she voted no too. So if she's if we have a red behind the bill, that means that's a bad bill. and she voted no. So she agreed with us. So when the colors match, that means that that legislator is voting the way we want them to. So she voted. She only voted. Let's see. She didn't vote on the way we wanted to. You can see on AB 230. That's she. You see that's green. Though she voted yes. An I, an A, an I. How do you say that? A nay, yay. A yay is a yes. And so she voted yes on a bill that requires schools to stock menstrual products in third and fourth grade girls' bathrooms and at least one boy bathroom. So we were against that bill specifically for, sticking menstrual products in a boy's bathroom in third grade. Anyway, but she voted yes on that one. But that was like the only bill that she voted that we didn't like. Now you also see it'll say there's a yellow spot, means that that's ABS, means abstention. Now abstention means that there was no vote taken. So that means either she was not there or she was there and just didn't vote on that bill. And so she only didn't vote on 2 of these bills that we were looking at. And so if you didn't vote on the bill, you get half a point marked down. If you voted differently than the way you wanted to, then you got a full point marked down. So because she only voted once the way we didn't want it, and she only voted twice, didn't vote at all, she got a pretty good grade. So that's how the grades work.
Every legislator is based off of these same list of bills. So we're just showing you hers so you can see what the bills are and all that. But every state senator and assembly member was, again, graded off this exact list of bills right here. And then something I just wanted to point out back to the assembly members' scorecard, how we have the top 4 up there. Something that I think is really great and encouraging for us here in California is Assemblymember Joe Patterson, who's one of the top 4. He is actually a freshman this year. This was his first year as an assembly member. He's been doing a lot of work in the Capitol, working in different staff and things like that. But first year as a legislator, and he was in the 4 with the highest score, that all tied for that 91 as a freshman. So really encouraging just to see that from him. And also I do want to clarify, you can see at the top it says California Family Alliance. We have our California Family Council, and then we have our C4, California Family Alliance. And so that's where these scorecards are coming through. So if you go to californiafamily.org, you won't find this on that website, but if you go to californiafamilyalliance.com, you'll find all of this there. Greg,
we talked about the good news.
Yes.
Let's talk about some of the bad news, because as you can see on this list, we got a lot of bad grades. Mm-hmm. Actually, most people failed, right? And why don't we start with the worst Republicans in the assembly? You can see on there, Assemblywoman Marie Waldron got a 48%. She is from the Escondido area. She used to be a lot more conservative. She was even on the Christian Caucus at one time. That was put on by the Salt and Light Council. She has fallen. I think this is her last term, though. So that's kind of sad to see. There's another freshman legislator from the Central Valley, Juan Alanis, and he got a 41. And then the worst Republican of all was Assemblyman Greg Wallace, a 28%. That is just, why in the world does he not just go to the other party? I don't know. He voted against all the abortion. He voted for all the abortion bills, most of the education bills we were against, most of all the LGBT bills. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, and I think what's most disappointing is that when you see the Republican at 28 and then the first Democrat at 24, we're not a purple state. Everyone knows California is a very blue state when it comes to our legislature. Everyone knows that California Democrats are not moderate. We know here that our California Democrats, compared to other states, are some of the most extreme Democrat legislators across the nation. So if the Republicans here in California were doing a good job, then there would have been a pretty large split. It should have been maybe the lowest Republican at 70% and then the highest Democrat at 24%. There should have been a very large split because of how extreme the Democrats are. That just goes to show that when you vote in a Republican, they're not always going to Sacramento and doing the right thing.
Right.
Greg, do you want to maybe highlight how, well, I can't even say the bottom four. It looks like it goes 4%, and it looks like there's about 20 of them at 4%.
Well, let me highlight the best Democrat was Assemblyman Timothy Grayson. He's actually a pastor. I think he is the only pastor in the legislature. Anyway, so he had 24, and what got him a 24? Well, he didn't vote. He didn't vote on a couple of abortion bills. He didn't vote to remove the traditional biblical definition of marriage from the Constitution. And so that's what got him 24%. A couple not voting, and yeah, I don't think he voted. He voted with us on one bill, really, regarding human trafficking. And actually, if you see, no one got a 0. And that's because there was one bill that everyone on both sides of the legislature voted for that we were for as well. And that was the bill introduced by Shannon Grove, Senator Shannon Grove, and it was to make human trafficking of a minor a serious felony, and which would result in longer jail terms. It applies to the 3 strikes rule. So it was increasing penalties on people selling minors for sex. And so no one wanted to vote against that. So no one got a 0. So that's if you look at the list, you'll see all these people who got 4%. That's what they voted on. Otherwise, they would have got 0s. So folks are in the legislature are pretty darn hostile to biblical values. Mm-hmm. And this is just an objective, nonpartisan list of grading. Like, we didn't know how it would all turn out. Sometimes we were like surprised at some people. It's like, wow, I didn't know they were that conservative. And then, wow, I didn't know they were that liberal.
Yes.
And
I think it's also important to know that this isn't based off of any of their social media posts or if they spoke out or not on the floor. This is simply based off of their voting record, which is public information for everyone. We've put it together to match up with the bills we were watching, fighting, the one that we were supporting. But there's no way to say, well, you misunderstood when I said that, or I didn't mean that when I said that. This is simply, they just had to click yes or no or abstain from voting on a bill. So it's simply based off what they did, and it's public knowledge that we have then used.
Right. Well, when we flip to the Senate side, because I know we talked about the Assembly.
Yes, here we have the state senators. So as you can see, there's a lot less because that's just how it works. We have a lot less.
Yeah, we had no A's in the Senate. Mm-hmm. And that was mostly because a lot of people aren't voting. And here's something that is probably going to get the Republicans a little annoyed at us, because to pass a bill, you have to have a number of yes votes. So technically, not voting has the same effect as a no vote. But the thing is, when you don't vote, people don't really know if you just weren't there or you were sitting there at your desk and you refused to say anything. And we have noticed a big trend, especially among Republicans, of just not voting on issues because they don't want anybody to know that they were, they don't want to vote no. They think it's too harsh, or they don't want anybody to call them out for it. But if you're elected to the legislature, we believe you need to be voting, right? And so we are grading people down for not voting. So hopefully, we're hoping when we start let the public know that, your legislators are just sitting there not doing anything, by not voting, encourage them to vote. I mean, you're up there to make a decision. If you don't like a bill, you say no. So if you look at this list, our top 2 senators were B+, 89. That was Brian Jones. He's actually the the leader of the Republicans, and then Kelly, and he's from the San Diego area, East County, and then Senator Kelly Ciarto, he is from like the Marietta area, and so they were the most conservative Republicans we had. The kind of the worst Republicans we had were Senator Ochoa Bowe, but by worst, she only got 72. So she at least passed. So like the worst we had in the assembly was 28. So, and Scott Wilkes, he almost got a B, but is there at 78. And then you have a Democrat who's up to 30%. So she is the most conservative, at least biblical voter, most biblically voting Democrat there is. And I know she's a person of faith. Says she's a Christian, and I know she's been going to a Bible study. But she's still voting on a lot of bad bills that are not Christian, do not reflect Christian values. So that's the problem. Is a lot of these folks would claim to be Christians, but they do not vote. The things they vote for contradict Christian values, which is hard to understand. And the last thing I was going to talk about was just who are the legislators in the Senate and the Assembly who are voting, who are absent the most or abstaining the most.
Yeah, so here you can see Assemblymember Philip Chen's scorecard. And again, as Greg said earlier, underneath the bill color is the way we wanted people to vote. So we wanted people to vote no, so red, on all of these but SB 14. And then where it says how they voted, if it matches the color, then they did good. If it doesn't, then they didn't do good. So that yellow where it says ABS, that means they abstained from voting. And as Greg was mentioning earlier, we didn't elect these people or send these people to Sacramento to be silent. You work in any other job and you decide to not show up. And I'm not even saying that they didn't show up. Many of the times they're there sitting there and they choose to not vote. You go work any other job where you're not elected into it, but you're hired and you choose to sit at the office for the day and do nothing, you're fired. That's the situation. And honestly, that's how it should start getting treated. If the legislators are going up to Sacramento and they're not getting work done and they're not voting, the one thing we send them up there to do is introduce legislation and vote. People need to be aware of that. And so that's why we have Assemblymember Philip Chen's scorecard up here, because look at all the yellows he has there.
He has 8 times he didn't vote. Now, he could have been really, he could not be showing up. Either he's sick. I mean, sometimes there's a legitimate reason for not being there. But if you got 8, there's a trend, right? There's a trend, and the trend is you're trying not to offend anybody by your votes. But you're not. Listen, you're going up there to represent your constituents. You might as well be up there defending voting no. If all the other legislators are doing so. I mean, the Democrats. Lots and lots of Democrats, there are 0 abstentions. Now, what's that about, right? They are voting no or yes for all these bills.
There needs to be like a rule that the only reason you could have an abstain vote is if you actually physically were not there. Like, force them into voting. And I mean, obviously, it's not a rule.
If you try and figure out, I'm sorry.
No, all good. I was just going to say, if there's not a rule to actually force them into voting, then constituents need to be paying attention to who their legislators are. And if they're not voting, call them up. Ask them why they're not voting.
Well, and and I think this is done on purpose, but if you try and find out if the abstention was because of you were absent, or because you were just sitting at your desk and you didn't vote, they don't make that easy to figure out. It is complicated. You got to make some phone calls. You got to look up on an official document, and it's buried where the absences were. They don't make it easy, and so I think they do that on purpose. I wish they wouldn't. I wish they would simply have absent or abstention or yes or no. That would make it simple. And then on the Senate side, the person who also didn't vote 8 times was actually Shannon Grove. One of our champions for many of the things we believe in, but she's got a habit of not voting on a bunch of bills. So hopefully this next year, both these legislators will start voting more. We hope them all to be voting more.
Yeah,
and
just
up as well.
Yeah, because it wasn't just them two; they just were the two on each side.
There was a lot of 7s and 6s and 5s, but those 2 members are the ones that had 8.
Yeah.
So.
And I just want to point out now that you guys can see the state Senate report card again. A trend that we always see on social media and all that is how upset parents and Christians are with the bills Senator Scott Wiener is introducing and how he votes and all that. And yes, again, if he does something good, we'll praise him. If he does something against what we stand for, we're going to call it out. So quite often we are calling him out. But look at the state Senate report card. He's not the only one with the 4%. He has quite a few people alongside of him. So it's important to just kind of be aware that there's just not 1 or 2 people up there attacking Christian values, not voting how we would want them to, going directly against parents, being extremely pro-abortion, pro-trans ideology. It's not just him. Look at all the people that are aside with him. I mean, I just hope that's maybe a wake-up call, too, to people of California that it's a wide group of people up there attacking our values, not just one person.
Right. And another thing I hope this reveals is there is a difference in the parties. You notice that all the folks at the top of the list are Republicans and all the people at the bottom of the list are Democrats. Now, why is that? Well, because party platforms have an influence on their voting. And so for churches to say, there's no difference between God doesn't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, it all just doesn't, God doesn't care, right? Well, parties matter, and this reveals how parties matter, because parties are based on beliefs, and these parties are promoting and, they just have different belief systems. And so anyway, this is objective. We haven't set this up just to make all the Democrats fail and the Republicans succeed. I mean, I wish our whole goal would be have more Democrats get higher and higher grades. That's what we would love. We don't care. We don't care if it makes Democrats look better. Ultimately, we want everybody to be reading their Bibles and to be taking the principles of justice and goodness and righteousness, and those to be reflected in the laws of the land. That's our ultimate goal. We're not here to promote a particular party.
Absolutely. And I just want to highlight too, Greg, you mentioned Senator Marie Alvarado Gil, you mentioned she's a Democrat. She did get the highest score out of all the Democrats on both sides. And she has talked about how she is a woman of faith. And it's shocking, how can someone say they're a woman of faith and vote the way she has on certain things? And I think that also goes back to the church has failed on talking about these issues. And not everyone, there's pastors that do, there's Christians that get involved, but this goes to show that if you are at a church or have a pastor that isn't talking about this stuff, have those conversations with your pastor. Open up that door and ask them, why aren't you talking about this? Because it leads to people like Senator Marie Alvarado Gil. And so also, I just think, we have a lot of parents that sit here and listen, and let this be a lesson that wherever you plug your children in with, or have those conversations with your children, you don't necessarily need a pastor and someone else to do it. Sit down with your child and explain to them how to live out their life as a Christian based off of biblical values. And I think that's how we're going to make a major change here in California. But I just wanted to note how it results in someone saying they're a woman of faith, but voting that way.
Yeah, I mean, and I've seen this happen before. You have some of these legislators, they grew up in church, but they're never taught or discipled on how to apply the Bible to everyday issues, right? And they're told there's some type of separation, that the Bible's not to apply to political issues and to issues of morality that affect society. Wrong. Wrong. Jesus never said that, right? Daniel, all the heroes of the Bible, they never said the Bible is not to affect the way a governor should lead, a political official should make decisions about justice. No, God calls all of us to live by justice, right? And so that includes how laws are applied to everybody's society. So anyway,
well, that is all we have for you this week. We are wrapping up with the end of the year. And as we approach the new year, we're over at CFC getting ready for next year's legislative session to get you all informed about that. But we also want to kind of highlight some of the wins. We talk often about this bad bill passed or this happened, but as bad as some of the bills were this year, I think we've also seen so many wins this year and so many good things come out of this year and protecting biblical values here in the state of California. So tune in next week, because we are actually going to be having multiple different podcasts throughout next week and the week following, with just updates with some special guests joining us on the podcast, talking about how we worked with them this year and the great things that have happened here in California. So tune in with us for those recaps starting next week.
Sounds good.
All right. See you all.